Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Hong Kong police arrests 13 people in connection with last week's deadly fire that killed at least 146 in a residential complex. Early investigations reveal that substandard building materials contributed to the fire. Death toll from floods and landslides in Indonesia rises to 502. Meanwhile, 508 individuals are still missing. Tulip Siddique, the British Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison by a Bangladesh court over corruption charges related to her aunt. The country's ousted former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Amid the ongoing peace talks on ending the Russia-Ukraine war, US President Donald Trump expresses hope, says good chance of reaching a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. As Ukrainian delegations wrapped up Ukraine peace talks in the United States, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that talks were productive, but more work is to be done on the truce proposal. Donald Trump confirms reports of telephonic conversation with Venezuelan leader Maduro. However, Trump did not reveal further details. This call comes amid escalating tension between both the countries. Venezuelan leader accuses the United States of wanting to take over its oil resources. Venezuela has also asked OPEC Plus to show solidarity in the face of what it considers an escalation that could endanger Venezuela oil production. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed US President Donald Trump's threat to exclude Pretoria from next year's G20 summit, reaffirming South Africa's status as a founding member of the group. And let's move on to the top focus story on this bulletin, viewers. Hong Kong police have arrested 13 people over last week's deadly fire that killed at least 146 people. Early findings show that mesh and styrofoam used in the building's construction helped the fire spread quickly. The suspects allegedly mixed standard and substandard materials. More than 40 people remain missing, and some bodies may be too badly burned to recover. The police have completed a quarter of the search in one tower, finding 8 additional bodies. They expect to finish the search within 3 weeks, but some bodies may never be identified. The government tested more than 20 mesh samples from the complex and 7 failed fire safety standards. Citywide, 300 out of 359 towers with mesh on renovation sites are now being inspected. Authorities have also warned against the spread of false information about the blaze. A full manslaughter probe has led to the arrests of 12 men and 1 woman. Enforcement of renovation projects will be strengthened to prevent further tragedies. And Andrew K.P. Leong, who is an independent Chinese strategist, now joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us here at NewsX World and taking time out to speak to us. The fire tragedy has risen alarm bells, not just in China, but across the world. A larger question that's now being raised is whether other buildings that may have used similar materials are also at risk, and how can that risk be prevented now?
Well, there are many high-rise buildings around the world, in cities around the world, not least, of course, in Hong Kong as a congested city, and other cities on mainland China and elsewhere. So this tragic catastrophe is a good lesson for everybody to learn from. Now, of course, this rising anger, disappointment, and also sense of grief in Hong Kong, at the same time with an outpouring of solidarity involving volunteers and visits of other people across the city, paying homage and condolence books, huge queues, carrying on in the middle of the night. And also the government putting no stops in providing immediate relief to those victims. As many as 1,500 victims were immediately housed, and then everybody was assigned social workers. One or two specific social workers were assigned per victim to help them with relief measures and arranging for all sorts of personal immediate needs, including replacing the identity cards. While this is happening, of course, concurrent investigations are carrying on into nefarious practices in the trade, which is, of course, quite common in many other areas across the world, and with contractors shortchanging materials, even though some materials were initially found to be compliant, and they were replaced midway with substandard materials. Now, these materials in the tragic fire were used to cover the scaffolding of this renovated windows, and the windows were fitted again with a dangerous fire prone material, the foam rubber, protecting the window panes from being hit by falling debris. But unfortunately, these foam rubber panes were highly inflammatory. And so the whole thing spread like wildfire very quickly. But it's also, there are so many aspects involved. For example, whether the existing standards and regulations are adequate, and whether they contain provisions to prevent certain materials from being used, whether these regulations are sufficiently enforced, and of course, in these 8 blocks, they are governed on a day-to-day basis by management committees, whether there is a collusion between the management committee with certain subcontractors. So the Independent Commission Against Corruption is involved, and a number of individuals already arrested. Now, this catastrophe, of course, it is now, the fire has died down. The victims are being assisted and being giving all sorts of relief. But there is, in the society, there is a rising mood of anger and dissatisfaction with what had happened, which have taken the lives of 150 people, all of a sudden. So I think that this is what's going on, and then the investigations are still continuing, and the government is coming to grips with all these problems.
All right. Well, thank you for speaking to us, but do stay on. We have a statement coming in from the Security Secretary of Hong Kong. Viewers, let's listen in.
我哋相信目前嘅成因咧都係確信咧係應該係當日嗰個嘅安全網係未達呢個阻燃嘅標準，再加埋咧發泡膠嘅膠板咧引致到今次個大火蔓延得咁嚴重，同埋咧係嗰個發泡膠板令到係玻璃窗爆裂，將啲火係引入去室內嘅。
All right, let's have Andrew back into the discussion. Andrew, there's also the question of the sedition law that China has sought to invoke against any protesters. What do you have to say on the crackdown on the dissent that's coming up from people there?
Well, while this is going on, there is a coming let's go election in a couple of weeks' time, and this election is the first major election after a number of years, and with all the disruption Hong Kong has suffered as a result of the so-called protests involving violent stoppage of Hong Kong's law and order, with some even separatist elements in Hong Kong asking for Hong Kong's independence and openly challenging the authority of Beijing, which led eventually to Beijing being forced to impose a national security law in Hong Kong. So against this background, there are still some remaining elements involved, which who would take advantage of this opportunity to stir social discontent and antagonism against the government. I'm not familiar with the case of individual arrests, but that's the background. And of course, under the national security law, there are strict provisions against certain acts in certain circumstances, and that's another dimension of this unfortunate tragedy.
All right. Well, for now, thank you, Andrew, for speaking to us, and we do intend to keep coming back to you as more developments emerge. But for now, viewers, let's shift our focus to the floods in Indonesia. A tally published by the National Disaster Agency today states that the death toll from floods and landslides there has risen to 502, and 508 people may still be missing. The latest figure brought the death toll from flooding across Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia and Sri Lanka to more than 1,000. Rescue workers are racing to reach some areas of the hardest hit island of Sumatra, where thousands have been cut off and left without critical supplies. Many people in Aceh province have not still received flood aid. Food is not there, with some saying they haven't eaten for 2 to 3 days. Major roads across West Sumatra have been cut off by landslides and collapsed bridges, leaving multiple areas isolated. President Prabowo Subianto is visiting flood-affected areas in North Sumatra, one of the worst affected areas. His visit comes amid the rising criticism, with civil society groups urging the central government to declare a state of emergency in Sumatra to facilitate relief efforts. Let's first listen in to a survivor.
Nggak ada apa-apa, baju semua. Ya, sekarang dah mau disimpan kan, sudah air sudah naik ke kepala. Nggak bisa berdiri lagi, dah hanyut. Sudah habis semua, nggak ada lagi, nggak ada tersisa. Yang tinggal pondasi ini aja. Ini sudah hanyut semuanya, sudah jadi sungai. Ya, sudah jadi sungai.
All right, and V.K. Joshi, former director of Geological Survey of India, joins us live now from New Delhi. Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for speaking to us here at NewsX World. I want to first ask you, what's causing these disasters? We're seeing how entire Southeast Asia is facing these floods and landslides as a consequence. What is causing this geological shift?
See, we are living in an age of global warming, where extremes of climate are to be expected. Extreme rains, extreme droughts, these are the common phenomena of a global warming in any age of the earth. So we are living in that stage. And in such conditions, these mishaps are bound to occur like landslides. Because when there is excess rain, the mountains get soaked with the water. And if there is no outlet for water, it comes out, carries all the loose material, all the mud and everything, and floods the cities. So we have to keep in mind several things before we develop an area. For example, we have developed cities along the banks of the rivers, or on the foothills, or along the hills. So all these areas have got different problems. I'll talk about the floods because we are dealing with the floods right now. There, there's a thumb rule in case of flood. While developing any urban society, if there is a river there, we have to see the flood pathway. The flood pathway is the area of the river which it has flooded up to a depth of 30 centimeters in past 100 years. But we have forgotten all those thumb rules. Now we think that our cement concrete, RCC, is more stronger than any mighty river. As a result, these mishaps take place. That is one. Secondly, while developing the mountain roads in the mountain area, there is a lot of road cutting, and as a result, the slopes get disturbed. And in case of heavy rains, all that entire side slides down. So all these points have to be considered before developing an area, so that we develop in harmony with nature, not against the nature.
All right. Sure, sir. But do you think the technological advancement is now helping nations better prepare to sense a preeminent disaster and then take responsible steps for relief work in advance and even after the incident has taken place?
The areas which have been flooded and whatever damage has been done has been done. It cannot be undone that easily. But to prevent further damage in future, we have to take into consideration all the basic thumb rules of development, developing a society in an area. Our engineers are very intelligent, very sharp, they know everything, but they have to consider into fact something called nature. And nature is superpower, and when we are dealing with the superpower, we have to apply our brains how to circumvent such mishaps.
All right.
I'll give you one example. If an area is flood prone and you have constructed roads there, you have to see that the roads don't get submerged. You have to ensure that the material used for construction road is so sturdy that it doesn't get affected by the floods. So there are so many precautions to be taken. I think we forget about those precautions, and in a hurry we develop the area.
All right. Well, for now, thank you for joining us, Mr. V.K. Joshi. And with that, viewers, we move on to a breaking news that's coming in. Kremlin has now officially stated that the Russian President Vladimir Putin will be meeting U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff on 2nd December, that's tomorrow. The meeting will be taking place in Moscow. This comes after U.S. and Ukrainian officials held roughly 4-hour-long talks on the 30th of November yesterday in Florida. And viewers, let's move on to some more information coming in this regard. The European Union's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, has said that the coming days could prove crucial for efforts to advance diplomatic solutions to the war in Ukraine. Her remarks came as senior U.S. representatives prepare to travel to Moscow following discussions with Ukraine's negotiating team. Speaking ahead of a meeting of European Union defense ministers, Kallas has noted that initial assessments from recent US-Ukraine talks suggested they were difficult but productive. The final outcomes are not yet known. She further added that she is scheduled to speak directly with the Ukraine's defense minister and foreign minister to assess the situation and coordinate the next steps. Kallas emphasized that European partners are closely monitoring the diplomatic track and preparing for potential developments this week, which she described as possibly pivotal for ongoing efforts to end the conflict. Mark Sutherland, geopolitical commentator, joins us live now from London. Thank you, Mark, for joining us back here at NewsX World. Now, of course, crucial talks were held yesterday between Ukraine and US officials, and Kremlin has also confirmed that Witkoff will be meeting Putin tomorrow in Moscow. What do you think may have happened in yesterday's talks, although there are some statements coming in that talks were in a productive direction?
Pretty good to be with you. These talks are behind closed doors, and hence you ask the question. We just wonder. Well, let's go back. First of all, President Trump, when he came in to his second term, said, "I will sort this out in days." Sadly, he hasn't been able to do that so far, but he has been trying to do that. The administration has been trying to do that. As previously, there has always been these comments, understandably, from the Ukrainian government to say, "Look, Russia has taken land. We want that land. We want that land back." Whether some of that land will be taken back, we have yet to see, because Russia want a buffer zone. Klaus, in regard to the European Union, as their head diplomat or commentator on this subject, the European Union are not, the European ministers are not happy in the fact that they wish that they were part of these negotiations in Washington, D.C. A few weeks ago, we saw when they all flew out there. We have to bear in mind that President Trump has also been frustrated over the fact that what happened under the Biden regime in regard to sorting this out. And we also have to bear in mind and remember that Russia attacked a sovereign nation in 2022. So we all want to see this war end, and we want to see it end fast because of all the destruction in Ukraine and sadly, and the loss of life there. So we wait to see what they are then going to come out with, and also, as you say, Witkoff is then going to fly to Russia. We have to put in the mix all the economic strains on the Russian economy. We've noted in the last 48 hours the Ukrainians attacking the ghost ships in Turkey. So there are so many factors to this. But the number one thing is we genuinely want a peace deal and an end to this war. And I sense that is what the Trump administration is pushing forward, as well as then saying to NATO, like they have in the past, that we then have to stand, the European countries then have to start playing our part in regard to investing, in regard to military and our own armies and our own defense, and not just relying on America and the financing of NATO by them. Kriti.
Thanks, Mark, for sharing all that with us. But do stay on. There's another pressing development that's now coming in. Tulip Siddiq, the British Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison by a court in Bangladesh over corruption charges related to her aunt, the country's ousted former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Siddiq is accused of influencing Hasina to secure a government land plot for her family. Now, she denies the allegations, calling the trial politically motivated, and claims she was not informed of the charges or given proper legal representation. Siddiq had previously resigned from her role as a UK Treasury Minister in January due to controversy over her family ties. The case is separate from her financial links to Hasina's supporters, which led to her resignation. Sheikh Hasina was also sentenced to 5 years in prison for her involvement in the land project, and her mother, Sheikh Rehana, received 7 years. Hasina is also facing a death sentence for crimes against humanity related to last year's crackdown on protesters. I request Mark to join us back on this discussion here. Mark, it's baffling that Tulip has been given this sentence without even being involved in the trial. She disputes, and so do her lawyers, that she never had even an ID card or a voter ID card and has not held a passport since she was a child.
Kriti, as you said, she wasn't there. There are all these accusations that she has denied, and the recent one in regard to passport ID, Bangladeshi passport or ID card, she has then denied. And the comments that has been made is, how can Bangladesh then investigate corruption when the people on that investigation may be in fact be corrupt themselves? She resigned, as you pointed out, she resigned after being economic secretary to Treasury, and on the 15th of January this year. And it's about, as you quite rightly pointed out, in regard to the accusation of land and the purchasing of land. These are all, she has denied all of this. Hence, but she still stood down because it's what it perceived and what it's then looked like. And I just have to say this was a UK political comment, in the fact that the reason why she then stood down and had no option and along with potentially other accusations that are going on within, not with her, but with others within British politics, is the fact that the present Labour government came in saying, we're going to come in, there's going to be adults in the room, we are going to be accountable, basically inferring the lack of that in regard to the last Conservative government. So this is why it doesn't look good in regard to how this present government, the UK government, then conduct itself. But all credit to her, eventually she then didn't have an option, but she then resigned. She's still the MP of Highgate and Kilburn. But as you quite rightly point out, how can then people hand down a sentence, accuse you of doing things, and you're not even there to represent yourself? That's why various people, other ex-members of Parliament over here, and also people that within legal professional giving legal advice, have then written about saying that this, if she's going to be put on trial, it has to be fair. That's the big issue. But the other issue is this: is that we all want a fair trial. It's very interesting that the present Labour government wish to now looking at getting rid of trial by jury. So some people may say, well, you say one thing on one side of your mouth and then your actions in other areas are very different. Hence why people have said to her, you have to resign even until all these matters are then cleared up. But we all have concern about fraud and the misuse of power around the world in many countries. Hence why the comments have been made about this case.
Right. All right. Thank you, Mark, for speaking to us here. I'd let you go with that. And viewers, let's move on to another news now. Australia has moved to ban social media for children aged under 16, as the legislation is facing a backlash from those who say that online platforms help young people to develop their identity and develop valuable skills. However, according to experts, there is a fear that the legislation will hinder the development of digital literacy skills in children aged under 16. Meanwhile, some parents have responded. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
And that's her path, and I am proud of her. So I think it's great that, that's what she's chosen to do, it's what she's doing. And at the moment, that's what she likes. Whether that's going to be her forever career path, I don't think so. But I think it's giving her skills. I have the account in my name. I've changed a few settings. I've already had Meta ask me to verify my age. I've already done that. I think I'm still going to be able to post on Ava's.
So I think one of the worst things that parents can do is just sort of take a step back and say, well, they can't use it, therefore I don't have to do anything about it anymore. We know that's not the case. Of course, one of the potential dangers with this legislation is that young people will then go to other online spaces to connect, and that those spaces aren't regulated and there may not be transparency around them. So potentially creating more risk for young people.
And with that, it's a wrap on NewsX World. For more news updates, stay tuned for more international and breaking news updates to NewsX World.
What we can